Hello viewers, welcome to CEC lectures. Myself Dr. Preeti Jagwani. I am from Department of Computer Science, Aryabhatta College, University of Delhi. So as you all are aware that presently we are learning C++ or basically as the first course in programming we are learning introduction to programming using C++. So under this course what my today's topic is parameterized constructors and structures and unions versus classes. So these are the two agendas which we will be covering today. So some of you are actually very familiar with the procedural programming, and now we have shifted to another paradigm which is object oriented programming, and we are going through C++ under the umbrella of object oriented programming. So fine till this point. So those who are very familiar with this procedural or functional programming, they are aware with a term which is structure. So structure is basically, I can say, it's a data structure which is going to combine data items of non-similar types. For example, here array is there which is combining the data items of the similar type. So that means in array, if we have a data item which is of type integer, so all the data items will be of type integers. But in structures this does not happen. So within these structures we can have one integer item, one character, another string, and so on and so forth. So a natural question comes up in the mind that what is the difference between structures and classes, or more precisely we can say, is there any difference between structure and classes? So some of the programmers understand that within the structure we cannot define the member function, but this is not right. Within the structure we can define the member function. So now here it is, we can have various members which are of different types. We can define the member function. Now a confusion arises, then what is the difference between structure and classes? So coming on to the comparison of structure and classes, we can say a class is also a user defined data type, and so is the structure. But a class is syntactically, we can say, it is similar to an structure, or other way around we can say structure is an alternative way to specify a class. But where lies the difference? In both the structure as well as in the classes we can have data members as well as member function. The difference lies in the access specifications. So by default all the members of a structure are public, while by default in C++ all the members in a class are private. In all other respects your structures are equivalent to the classes, or we can say in C++ a structure defines a class type. So if we are saying it in this way, that in C++ a structure defines a class type, that is also fine. So the line of difference lies between the access specification of your members of a structure and members of classes. By default all members of an structure are private, while by default all the members in the structure are public, while in a class they are private. Now wherever we talk about classes, kind of similar word, or kind of we can say a very relevant and related word comes up, that is union. So there is a strong relationship, or kind of a strong, we can say relation, a correlation between structures and unions. So unions are also similar to the structure in terms of that they allow a programmer to have a group of non-similar data items under one common name, and so as structure is doing the same thing. But in case of union, as you all are aware, there is only one memory location which is allotted, and the member which is going to be accessed will be using that memory location. So in terms of memory allotment or in terms of memory allocation, your structure and union differs. So now as we have considered the difference between structures and classes, it's necessary to consider the difference between classes and union as well. So a union may also be used to define a class. In case of a C++ program, union may contain both member function and variables, that is also perfectly allowed, and they may also include constructors and destructors. So with unions there are kind of very similar to your classes in the terms they are allowed to have member functions and member variables both. They may also include constructors and destructors. A union in C++ retain all of its features which it is retaining in C. That means the most important is that all data elements share the same location in memory. This is what I was specifying between the when I was trying to draw the line of difference between structure and unions. In case of a union, all the data elements share the same location in the memory. So here this convention or this rule is inherited to C++ from C as well, that is all data elements will be allotted only one single location in memory in case of a union. And like the structure, union members are public by default. So considering union versus classes, we can say there are two important differences. One is union members are public by default whereas the class members are private by default in C++, and in case of a union all data elements are allocated only one memory location, while this does not happen in case of a class. But if we want to use unions in C++, there are some restrictions of using the union in place of a class. So first the restriction is a union cannot inherit any other classes of any type. So that means no inheritance is possible if we are using union, while in case of classes inheritance is actually a kind of we can say a very important and inadvertent property of your C++ classes. So in case of classes inheritance is possible, in case of unions inheritance is not possible. Similarly, a union cannot act as a base class. Union cannot have virtual member functions. So virtual member functions we will be covering in our upcoming lectures. So it cannot inherit any other classes of any type. So that means it cannot act as a children class. Similarly, a union cannot be a base class, so it can't be a parent class, it cannot be a child class, neither it can have any virtual member functions. So union cannot have any virtual member functions, and no static variables can be members of a union. Because of the restriction of shareable memory location, members of union cannot be static variables. I will be coming to static variables in the next lecture, that and then we will be discussing the structure static variable in terms of the data members as well as in terms of the member functions. So no static variable can be member of a union. Then apart from that there are some other restrictions as well, which are a reference member cannot be used here. A union cannot have as a member any object that overloads the is equals to is an operator, for which we will be doing some overloading operations in our upcoming lectures. So in case of a class it is perfectly possible, but in case of a union you cannot have a union cannot have as a member any object that overloads the equals to operator. And finally, no object can be a member of a union if the object has an explicit constructor or destructor function. As I have already told you, constructors and destructors are not allowed in case of unions. So, no object can be a member of a union if the object has an explicit constructor or destructor function. So, yes, if we pen down or list down all the restrictions, we have many restrictions with C++ unions. I am just summarizing that again. It cannot inherit any other classes of any type. A union cannot be a base class. It cannot have a virtual member function. No static variables can be members of a union. A reference member cannot be used. A union cannot have as a member any object that overloads the is equals to operator, and finally no object can be a member of a union if the object has an explicit constructor or destructor function. So, yes, I mean a lot many restrictions with union. So, in case of if we are looking for some functionality of static members or some functionality of virtual member functions or inheritance as a matter, inheritance if we want to use, then it's a better idea to use classes as compared to unions. But yes, as a programmer you need to be very clear about that what all are the restrictions or what all are the differences between structures and classes, and so is between classes and unions. Now, coming to our second part of the lecture, which was based on parameterized constructor. So, in order to give you a quick recap, constructor is actually we can say a special function which is having the same name as that of the class, and it is not having any return type, not even void, and it is we can say called whenever an object is being created. Now, coming to the types of constructors, we have three. One is a default constructor, another one is parameterized constructor, and third one is a copy constructor. So, my focus in this lecture is going to be a parameterized constructor. So, as the name indicates, parameterized constructor, that means it is having some arguments, some parameters. So, that means those arguments or parameters are being passed to a constructor. Now, what is the idea behind creation of a parameterized constructor is actually these arguments which we are going to pass in the parameterized constructor, which will help initializing an object when the object is being created. So, if we consider default constructor or any constructor for that matter, it is clear that constructor is being called when your object is being created, and if programmer is not going to supply any constructor explicitly, there is going to be a default constructor supplied by the compiler. But if there is an explicit constructor, whether there is whether that's a default constructor non-parameterized or whether that is a non-parameterized constructor or a parameterized constructor, if any explicit constructor is being passed, that constructor will be called at the time of object creation, and if there is no constructor being passed by the programmer, then your compiler is going to pass a default constructor. Now, coming to the parameters of a parameterized constructor, what are we going to do in case of a parameterized constructor is we need to simply add parameters as we are going to do with any other normal function. Then we will be defining the body of the constructor, and we will be using the parameters which are being passed in the prototype or in the signature in order to initialize the object. So, this is what is the main use of a parameterized constructor, that is, it is used to initialize an object whenever that object is being created. So, now let us see this with the help of a program. So, here we have one class along with the standard definitions, we have one class which is named as my class. There are two private member variables which are A and B, and in the public section we have defined one constructor which is my class. As it is the constructor, the same name will be same as that of class, and two parameters are being passed, this being a parameterized constructor. So, the two parameters which are being passed are integer I and integer j, and within the body of the constructor what is being done is value of I is being assigned to A and value of j is being assigned to B. A and B being the private member variables or private data members of the class will be accessed only within the class, or the functions defined within the class are allowed to access this A and B. So, value of I will be given to A and B will be initialized using the value of j, and then there is a function show which is displaying A and B both. Now, here what are we trying to show is that whenever we are going to call, when this parameterized constructor will be called. So, this parameterized constructor will be called whenever I am going to create an object. Now, here inside the main function there are two objects being created. One is OB1 which is given the value 3 and 5, and another one is OB2 which is given value 10 and 15. So, what is happening when this statement is being executed? When the statement my class OB1 3, 5 is being executed, the compiler is well aware that a constructor, and that too a parameterized constructor, has to be called, and that parameterized constructor is called. 3 and 5 are actually the actual parameters, I and j are the formal parameters, and value of that I and j will be assigned to A and B. So, basically the whole process goes like this. Object 1, OB1 is an object which is being created with A and B as its data members. Value of A will be 3, value of B will be 5, and this is being achieved with the help of your parameterized constructor. Now, coming to the next statement which says my class OB2 10, 15. The similar thing is going to happen. An object OB2 is being created, and within that object OB2 there are two values which are A and B. A has been assigned value of 10 and B has been assigned value of 15, and then we are calling OB1.show and OB2.show. That means show function is being called with both the objects using the dot operator, which is OB1.show and OB2.show, and within this what is actually happening? A and B are being printed. So, A and B of OB1 will be printed, the values are 3 and 5. A and B of OB2 will also be printed, values are 10 and 15. So, what actually is being achieved with the help of this parameterized constructor is we have directly initialized the values of an object which are A and B stored inside the private members or private data members, and these values have been initialized right at the time of object creation. Similarly, another object is being created which is OB2, and right at the time of object creation two values which are 10 and 15 being assigned to A and B. So, rather than using the get functions or getter and setter functions, which is a normal we can say convention or terminology which we use. So, this can be achieved with the help of a separate function, but instead of writing a separate function, it is a good idea to initialize the object using the parameterized constructor, and this is what is being done in this example. So, in the definition of my class, the parameters I and j are used to give initial values to a and b. So my class ob3 comma 4, it is going to cause an object called ob or ob1, whatever the name is, to be created and parse the arguments 3 and 4 to the I and j parameters of my class, and those values I and j will be given to a and b with the help of that parameterized constructor. So now we can say this parameterized constructor is actually dual fold work or dual fold task. One is the object creation. Object is being created whenever a constructor is called whenever an object is being created, and right with the definition of or right at the time of creation of object, your object is being initialized with the parameter of your choice. So dual, we can say dual advantage is being done. So now the next question arises, is there any other way of passing the arguments? So one idea which we have seen is my class ob1 3 comma 4. Another way of passing the argument is using a declaration statement like this, which is my class ob1 or ob is equals to my class 3 comma 4. So there are two ways of creation of object, or we can say there are two ways of calling the parameterized constructor. One is my class ob and then just passing the parameters within the parameter list of that particular object. Another one is my class ob equals to my class within the bracket 3 comma 4. Now are these two ways same? We can say yes as well as no. So that means the way the final goal is being achieved, or the final goal which is being achieved is actually the same, but there is a small technical difference between these two types of declaration, and that small declaration itself relate to copy constructors. So copy constructors I will be covering soon, and then I will be explaining this. So yes, the ultimate goal is, we can say, the same, that is creation of object, or we can say along with the creation, initialization of the object, but a very small technical difference between the two ways of declaration, and that technical difference relate to copy constructor, which we will be covering soon. Now if we can say, if we look in a deeper sense, that parameterized constructors are very useful because they allow you to avoid having to make an additional function call simply to initialize one or more variables in an object. So what does it mean? So for example, if there would have been no parameterized constructor, then what is the way to initialize object by your choice of parameters or your choice of variables? So that means with every object we need to call one additional function, and the task of that additional function is nothing but to initialize one or more variables within that object. And when that function is being called with the another object, it is going to follow the same process for the next object as well. That means it is going to initialize one or more variables in an object. So using parameterized constructor, that extra call to the function is very well avoided, and so you can say that that extra definition also we need not to write, because we are not calling that, we are not going to define that function as well. And so what are we going to gain out of it? So yes, we have avoided one function definition and multiple function calls. That means function calls with for each and every variable. So the achievement here is, if you can see, each function call which can be avoided makes your program more efficient. So it's not only the function call. So you are aware how a function call takes place. That means, execution and control is passed to the function call, then function body is being executed, and then the control returns back, and so on and so forth. That whole procedure is going. So function call is actually a costly affair in case of if we are looking this type of programs. So every function call which is being avoided is going to make your program more efficient. Now, if you can recall, what are the types of constructors which we have taken or which we have listed down. So there were default constructor, there were parameterized constructor which we have seen quite in detail, and there are copy constructors as well. So default and parameterized constructors we have covered in detail. So let's see what is the difference between default and parameterized constructor. So a parameterized constructor is written explicitly by a programmer, while a compiler is going to add a default constructor to the program code only when the programmer writes no constructor in the code. So if there is no constructor by the programmer, compiler is going to add a default constructor to the program, while a parameterized constructor is written explicitly by a programmer. Then whenever a programmer is going to write a constructor in the code, then it is sure that compiler will not add any constructor. If there is a constructor, parameterized or non-parameterized, given by the programmer, your compiler is not going to add any constructor. And if we talk about default constructor in particular, every default constructor is a zero argument constructor. That means your default constructor which is being supplied by the compiler is not going to have any argument, but every zero argument is not a default constructor. That means there can be a constructor which is defined by the programmer, and that constructor is not having any argument, but even then it cannot be called as a default constructor, because default constructor will be supplied by the compiler itself. So I am repeating, every default constructor is a zero argument constructor, but vice versa is not true, that every zero argument constructor is not a default constructor. So let us summarize our today's lecture. We have seen what is the difference between structures and classes, and then we have seen classes versus unions, what are the restrictions of using unions in case of C++, and then we have seen parameterized constructor in detail, and towards the end we have covered what is the difference between default as well as parameterized constructor. And here is a list of references which is being used for preparing this lecture. Hope you had a fruitful learning. Thank you for listening.